Good morning, everybody. How's everybody today? Good. Somebody said good, thank you for that response. Usually people just look and go, whatever. My name is Judy Brown. I'm joined this morning by Kathy Walczek, Lori Wilson, and your very own Jennifer McAllister. We're all members, students in the Master of Theological Studies program, and we are very happy to be with you this morning to lead you in prayer and reflection. Our prayer experience this morning will focus on stories. We believe that stories keep us connected to our loved ones, whether they are still with us or whether they have gone before us, as well as help us to stay more closely connected to our God. We will be sharing stories with you this morning, both from Scripture and from our personal lives. We will also be giving you the opportunity to share some thoughts with those around you. Our hope is that you come away from this experience with the understanding that every life, including yours, is a story that is worth telling over and over again. Please join us in our song.
Every year on my daughter's birthday, I tell her about the day she was born. And every year on my daughter's birthday, my husband tells her she was not born, she was hatched. This year on Father's Day, she made him this egg that says, "Happy Father's Day, love, Caitlin." As an MTS student, we look closely at the birth narratives in the Gospels. They're only in 2 of the 4 Gospels, and they differ from each other. So as students, we take a real critical look at those Gospels. We ask questions like, why are the 2 different? Why are they only contained in 2 of the 4 Gospels? We look closely at the text and at the meaning of words and what they meant then. We ask, was this written first as it appears in the Gospels, or was it added later, and if so, why? And the way after being a part of those courses, I hear the story different and I tell the story different. But I realize the most important thing is telling the story, that the story continues. The story is what connects me with my faith. And then I'm going to go back to my daughter's story. Every year on her birthday, I tell her about the day she was born. And this started when she was 2 years old, and we were laying in bed, and I was putting her to bed at night on her birthday, and she asked me to tell her about the day she was born. So I'm going to share with you what I told her when she was 2. It sort of went like this. It was a beautiful, beautiful fall day. Her birthday is October 17th, so it was a blue sky and a beautiful day, and I knew I was going to have my baby that day. So I had a doctor's appointment, and I went to the doctor, and he said, yes, you're ready to have your baby. You can walk down to the hospital, which is just a block or two away. And I went outside, and I just saw the beautiful blue sky, and the air was so crisp, and those little white puffy clouds, and the leaves were turning, so you could see the greens and orange and yellow against the blue sky. It was just beautiful. And I put my hand on my belly, and I said, this is the day I'm going to have my baby. And when I got to the hospital, she was born I tell her, you were born in 2 hours from then, you were born. And when you were born, you had the most beautiful girl lips and pink cheeks, both sets. And I thought to myself, you are the most beautiful girl in the world. And that's the story I told her when she was 2. Now, every year, she would either ask or I would remember to tell her the story. And the story changes a little bit from year to year. Some years I tell her about when her brother looked in my belly button and saw that she was a girl and told everybody this was a girl. Some years I tell her about the long labor. I didn't just go to the doctor that day. I was in labor for a day first. But the story continues, and last year she went off to college as a freshman. And that was the first time that her and I weren't together for her birthday. So I wrote the story out on paper, and I included photographs and her present, and I shipped it off to her. And that night of her birthday, she got it on her birthday, and she called me that night and said, "Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you remembered. I was worried that you wouldn't." That story connects my daughter and I so strongly. She was home from school, and I told her what I was going to do today, and she said, we both cried, and that story just connects us so closely together. And it connects us not only with each other, but a bigger love, and that we don't even talk about, we just know is there. So what I would invite you all to do is take a few moments and reflect on the stories of beginnings for you or your birth story. And then after reflection, I invite you to share with somebody next to you.
like to begin by sharing with you a story that we find in the Gospel of Mark. It's a story about the paraplegic who had the friends who insisted that this guy be able to see Jesus because they knew Jesus was there. They knew he was healing people. And so these friends picked him up on his mat and took him to where Jesus was, and they couldn't get in. So they went to these great lengths to open up the roof and lower this guy down just so he could have this opportunity. So they believed so strongly that he would be able to be healed, and he came to believe it about himself as well. He asked for that healing, and he received it. I'd like to tell you a story about a really amazing person in my life. Graduated from high school with honors, obtained a teaching degree, and taught at a one-room school. That tells you how long ago it was. Went on for a master's degree in library science and worked in the Ashwaubenon School District right here near West Green Bay. And she established a library at one of the schools and then worked for many years at one of the other schools. World traveler. She's been to Germany, England, France, and Spain, just to name a few of the places she's been. She's gone sailing on modern cruise ships and also one of those 19th century sailing vessels. And her travels have taken her to all 50 states. Her love of reading and history are evidenced by her very impressive collection of books that line the bookshelves in her home. Now, that might not seem like a terribly unusual story until you realize that this woman was expected to die when she was 12 years old. She was struck with polio in 1946 and lay in a hospital for weeks and was eventually sent home fully paralyzed. After a year of doctors and treatments, nothing seemed to be working, and she wasn't expected to live. A neighbor suggested a new treatment that had been introduced in recent years as kind of a last-ditch effort. And so for the next number of months, she was taken to a chiropractor 3 times a week to have her muscles and her skeletal system manipulated. The results that followed were nearly miraculous. Within a year's time, she was moving her arms and legs and eventually was able to ride her bike. Shortly after that, she was walking with the help of a cane, and by the time she was 15, she was enrolled with her original class in high school. That was when the work really began. She didn't want to go back. She was embarrassed by her twisted and imperfect body and was sure she would be treated poorly by others at school. Her mother, however, insisted on her going and returning to school, and her father cried for her as she headed out each day. After a couple of weeks, she had an epiphany about her situation. She could allow her disability to define her, or she could allow her true self to be that by which she lived. At 15 years of age, she made a promise that she kept for the next 59 years. She would not allow her physical disability to define her or get in the way of who she knew she was called to be. Just like the friends in the gospel story of the paraplegic, she was surrounded by family and friends who believed she could succeed, and she came to believe it as well. This is a story that is just beginning to be passed down to our children by not only the retelling of her story, but by all of us who knew her embodying the attitude that she witnessed to us. When we feel like we can't overcome something in life, we go to this story that I have just shared and are strengthened and renewed by it. By striving to live the non-judgmental and strong-willed life that truly defined this amazing woman, we keep her story and her spirit alive. The last time I saw my aunt was on February 13th, 2008. I was leading common prayer on that day too. And she came out to share in the experience with this community and sat right over there. She was a true inspiration to everyone who knew her and she lives on in our memories, our stories, and our lives. I'd like to, if you could take a few minutes to reflect on someone in your own life who has made an impact on you. What part of their story will you keep alive by witnessing to their goodness in your own life? Feel free to share that with the person next to you.
story comes from my faith tradition. It is from the 2nd chapter of Luke, verses 22 to 38. For those that are not familiar with the story, and for those of you who might not recognize my interpretation of the story, it is a story of faithfulness to the law. It is a story of faithfulness to the Spirit. It is a story of dedication to God. It is a story of sorrow and a story of hope. When I'm finished my story, I will sit down and allow you to stay in the story or go into your own story. And we will use your story as our closing prayer. For those of you that have to keep a schedule this morning, when the music is done, the program is done. Welcome, dearies. Have you traveled far? Is this your first time here? Well, if you'd like to freshen up, it's through those doors, take a right at the pool, and take a left before you hit the second set of doors. Why have you come? Have you come to pray? That's why I'm here. I've been here praying day and night since my husband passed. My name is Anna, and I do what I can. I am compelled to tell you a story of a young family that journeyed here, much like yourselves. They came for the purification rite. It's just for the new mother. But the husband hasn't let them out of her sight since the child was born. The husband's name, it was Joseph, his wife, Mary, and the child, they carried it as if it was a gift from God. That's why they came too. They came for the presentation rite. They carried a pair of turtle doves. I think it was all they could afford. And then out of nowhere, Simeon appears. Moved by the Spirit, he says. God knows it takes a mighty force to move that man. He snatched up the baby and said something like, "Oh God, let me die." I nearly dropped my teeth. Mary had all she could do to remain calm. She didn't say a word. And Joseph, well, he looked like the center fielder for the Brewers. When we regained our composure and really listened to what he had to say, this is what we heard, and I'm compelled to tell the story. He said, "Now, Master, you may let your servant go in peace, according to your word. For I have seen your salvation, that you have prepared in the sight of all people, a light to be the revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel." Simeon then blessed the parents and spoke to Mary directly. This child is destined to be the rise, the fall and the rise of many in Israel. He is a sign that will be contradicted. And you a sword will pierce, such that the hearts of many will be revealed.